Hello, my name is Aaron Schwartz, and this is my ET255 capstone project. For this project, I've chosen to do a micro hydro system for this client, and so when we look at my energy usage from project 1, we have 1,675 kilowatt hours per month in electric and 2,005 kilowatt hours in transportation. And I wanted to make a quick note that that's 3 gas-powered vehicles, and so this system is probably larger than most people would need, even if they were trying to size for their transportation needs, because a micro hydro system would only be able to charge an electric vehicle. So when we total all that up and then factor in the 5 kilowatt solar system that the client has purchased, then we find that the micro hydro system is going to need to produce 3,105 kilowatt hours per month of energy, and so a rough size for that system would be 4.313 kilowatts. So I used an initial target of 4.5 kilowatts to estimate my system sizing. So using Mr. Somerville's calculations from his lecture series, I assumed the 53% efficiency as he did, and found that 200 to 250 gallons per minute of available flow for diversion and 180 feet to 225 feet of static head would be needed to meet this system's power demand. So choosing a site within these constraints on either side would meet your energy demand or close to it. However, choosing something on the upper end of both would probably be oversized, and you would lose some of the benefits of North Carolina's net metering policies, such as the way the billing cycles reset annually to give a lot of the credit to the utility. So you want to make sure you're not too far above your electric needs. So I used the following assumptions for a hypothetical site that the client should look for something close to this when they're looking for their new residence. And so I said there's going to be 200 feet of static head. The stream is going to have an available flow for diversion of 225 gallons per minute, and the penstock is going to need to be 375 feet long in order to get to the turbine. So, moving on to the system components, I would probably recommend using a spillway that utilizes a Coanda effect screen that is designed for 225 gallons per minute. This is just the easiest, lowest maintenance thing. It's a little bit more expensive than some other intakes, but it's going to be the most effective. So for the penstock, I said using high-density polyethylene pipe that's preferably fusion welded at the joints is going to be the best, just because it's durable and holds up to UV and all that. So accounting for friction losses, I said a 4-inch pipe is going to be needed because that results in a 5.4% loss. A 3-inch pipe would result in over 20% loss due to friction in the pipe. 3.5-inch pipe, I did not have a table for that. However, that would probably be somewhere in between those two losses in efficiency. However, with a 4-inch pipe, you get 189.2 feet of dynamic head, and so that's pretty good for what we're looking for. Gets us to where we need to be. And so the nozzles for the system, the end of the penstock is just going to be PVC leading up to these nozzles, probably just because it's going to be easier to build and it's readily available. So I said 4 nozzles are probably going to be best for this, and you're just going to have adjustable valves due to the variability of stream flow and power needs. So a 5/8 inch nozzle and that'll do 109 gallons per minute at 200 feet of head, which is roughly what we have. And then three 3/8 inch nozzles, which will do 39.1 gallons per minute each. And so that gets us over our 225 gallons per minute of design flow. And so we can use those valves to make sure we're not diverting too much water in the stream's flow during a dry season. The turbine, I'm going to suggest using a Harris Hydro Pelton wheel. They're designed for this kind of flow, and 4 nozzle ones cost around $2,300. And they come with a generator, so using a rough interpolation from their tables on their website, they would say that our system is probably going to produce around 4,000 watts of electricity, which gets us to pretty close to our 4.313 kilowatt goal from earlier. The turbine housing is going to be nothing fancy. It's probably just going to be a simple wooden casing or platform that's pretty much adjacent to the stream, and that way we don't have to worry about a tail race or anything. The water will just return to the stream, and it'll just be right there. This will result in likely a longer wire run to the residents, though. So that brings us to wire sizing. I assumed that the house is going to be within 125 feet of the turbine, and so I used a voltage drop index calculation to find out what wire size we would need in order to stay under 5% voltage loss. So a 0 gauge wire would be needed if we were to do this system as is. However, I would probably recommend running 4 wires at a lower amperage, because you could get a 6 gauge wire doing that, and that would be a lot cheaper to do than the 0 gauge. Or you could do two wires at number 2 gauge, which is still fairly large and pretty expensive. So balance of system, the components such as a inverter and charge controller and battery bank, those are going to depend on some key traits of the solar array, such as string size and module voltage and amperages at max power. So I wasn't able to specifically look into any inverters or charge controllers. However, we know that the battery bank would not need to be large because hydro is pretty constant. Stream's going to be flowing pretty much year round for the most part. And then the inverter is going to need to probably be a 10,000 watt inverter to handle the hydro system and the solar array. So financial considerations for this project. The cost, the more expensive components are probably going to be the turbine, which Harris Hydro estimates a 4 nozzle turbine would likely cost around $2,300. The HDPE pipe is going to be pretty expensive for 375 feet at a 4-inch diameter. That's pretty large. And then the wires, depending on which wires you choose, are going to be pretty variable there. The inverter is also going to be another significant cost, as well as the Coanda effect intake. Those are pretty specifically engineered for a certain site. And so considerations in North Carolina's policy, net metering is required by investor-owned utilities. So as long as the client is living somewhere where they're serviced by an investor-owned utility, then they will be able to get net metering pretty much guaranteed. However, there are some important caveats to this, and that's that at the end of the year, net excess generation is granted to the utility, so you lose your credit there for the energy that you generated, and renewable energy credits are automatically granted to the utility, so you don't get to sell those on the REC market. And North Carolina's interconnection standards would require a $100 permit for this size system, and that's going to be fast tracked and relatively easy to do. So that wouldn't be overly difficult to set up. And as long as your system is inspected by a licensed electrician and the local permitting department, then you're good to go for utility interconnection. Blue Ridge EMC also has a net metering program that allows you to pay a higher basic facility charge as a flat rate. However, your electric rates are lower. I don't think this would be desirable for the client because they want to be less reliant on the utility, and paying a higher base rate doesn't seem like something they would want to do. If they're somewhere that's serviced by the Tennessee Valley Authority, then they can have a 20-year contract that pays 9 cents per kilowatt hour of net electricity, which is pretty good for retail rates around here, and that requires the same interconnection stuff from NC is pretty much the standards for getting this contract with TVA. There doesn't seem to be any loan or grant programs that would work for a residential system of this size in North Carolina, so the client would have to fund this project pretty much out of pocket or go through a private lending institution. Not really any tax incentives or anything like that. All right, thank you, and